Okay, today's lecture is going to be over Chapter 14, Section 1, the objectives. Number 1, analyze the roots of the Balkan conflict. Number 2, identify immediate causes of fighting in the Balkans near the end of the 20th century. Now, I'm just going to kind of give you a warning here. This is probably going to be the most difficult section in the most difficult lecture that we go over. The Balkan conflict is a very long conflict. It's a very difficult one to follow with all the different groups, so it's going to be more difficult than normal, so make sure that you do the best that you can. If you're a little bit lost at something, you may want to pause the video, back it up, so on and so forth. First thing we're going to do is we're going to watch a video that can kind of help explain what we're talking about today.
Joseph Tito, who had kept Yugoslavia together since World War II, died in 1980, just as the USSR began reforming and the Yugoslav economy began declining. The IMF agreed to loan Yugoslavia money, but required a series of reforms which worsened unemployment, decentralized the Communist Party, and helped fuel nationalism. However, who became nationalistic first is still a matter of debate. So, to explain Yugoslavia briefly, there were 6 republics. There were the wealthy Catholic republics of Slovenia and Croatia, who sought closer relations with Europe, the poorer Orthodox Republic of Macedonia, the Central Orthodox Republics of Montenegro and Serbia, and the Muslim Republic of Bosnia. Plus, Serbia had 2 autonomous regions, Vojvodina and Kosovo. However, Kosovo was largely inhabited by Muslim Albanians, Croatia had a large Serb population, and Bosnia had a large population of Serbs and Croats. So, calls for greater autonomy grew louder throughout the 1980s, and unrest soon followed, particularly in Kosovo, where the Serbs felt persecuted by the Albanian majority. In the midst of the unrest in Kosovo, Slobodan Milosevic became a Serbian hero in 1987 by promising to protect Serbs against the alleged persecution. This helped encourage a wave of protests across Yugoslavia which aimed to unite Serbia and remove any ineffective leaders. By 1989, the anti-bureaucratic revolution had succeeded in putting Milosevic and his allies in power in Serbia, Montenegro, Kosovo and Vojvodina. However, they were prevented from protesting in Slovenia by the Croatians, plus the Slovenians, who were already angry at the arrest of journalists, lent their support to the striking Kosovan miners. Angered, Milosevic imposed sanctions on Slovenian goods, but this just made Slovenia walk out of the Congress of the League of Communists in January 1990, ending the Communist Party of Yugoslavia. With the collapse of the Communist Party, the first multi-party elections took place in 1990, and independence parties took power in Macedonia, Bosnia, Slovenia and Croatia. But the Serbs living in Croatia feared that the new national government may commit the same atrocities the Croatian nationalists did in World War II. So they began to form militias, while the Croatians and Slovenians began to import arms from abroad. With rising tensions and nationalism, small clashes between local forces took place, and there seemed to be no sign of a solution. So Slovenia and Croatia declared independence in June 1991, starting the wars. For the homogeneous Slovenia, the war was only 10 days. The peace somewhat delayed their independence, but the federal army focused on Croatia, so Slovenia was free to break away from Yugoslavia. Meanwhile, the Serbs of Croatia had declared their own independence. Then, through a series of bloody battles, notably at Vukovar, they began to expel the Croats from their new republic, Serbian Krajina, while the Yugoslav army lay siege to Dubrovnik. However, the city never fell. As they fought, Macedonia was able to peacefully declare their own independence. After a few months of fighting, the UN called for a ceasefire in Croatia in January 1992 and sent troops in to keep the peace. This peace allowed both the Serbians and Croatians to turn their attention to Bosnia, which they both sought to partition. In March 1992, the Bosnians voted for independence, and violence erupted shortly afterwards as Bosnian Serbs declared their own independence. These Serbs pushed the Bosniaks from their new republic and laid siege to Sarajevo, while the Croat-Bosniak War erupted in July. The armies were made up mainly of volunteers and mercenaries, many of which held extremist views, mujahideen, paramilitary, neo-Nazis, etc. So, a number of atrocities were committed by all sides. However, the Bosniaks bore the brunt of these crimes. Over the next year, the Bosniaks lost a great deal of land. However, they were able to keep control of Sarajevo and fight off some advances. But the situation changed in 1993 when Clinton became president of the USA and got involved in the conflict. The UN had imposed sanctions on Serbia and Montenegro, successfully keeping them from entering the Bosnian War directly. So, through threats of sanctions, the West managed to pressure Croatia into making peace with Bosnia in early 1994 and joined forces to fight the new Serbian republics. The Bosniaks and Croats pushed on land, and in mid-1995 they were aided by NATO airstrikes. With comparatively limited support, the republics of Srpska and Krajina finally had to accept peace at the end of the year. The republics were annexed by Croatia and Bosnia, and this put an end to the chance of a greater Serbia. So Yugoslavia was left only with Serbia and Montenegro. However, tensions remained high in Kosovo. Initially, independence movements in Kosovo were peaceful, but they became violent in 1996 with the foundation of the Kosovan Liberation Army, which received training and money from the West. Their attacks on Yugoslav authorities intensified until Milosevic, then president of Yugoslavia, responded, and the Kosovan War erupted in early 1998. But a year into the conflict, NATO responded by conducting a series of airstrikes on Serbia, forcing Milosevic to withdraw his troops. Milosevic was later ousted from power after a disputed election, and Yugoslavia became Serbia and Montenegro. But in 2006, a referendum narrowly passed and the two nations split. Then, with foreign troops still in Kosovo, Kosovo declared independence in 2008, however many nations have not recognized it.
Okay, so where we're at right now is that we're basically, if you guys kind of look, we got France here, we got Italy over here, the Italian Peninsula, Iberian Peninsula again is off the screen right here. What we're looking at is that we're looking at the Balkan Peninsula right here. And with the Balkan Peninsula, this is a really unique area because you're going to see Eastern Europe. This is an area right here that was really kind of taken by places when the Soviet Union is going to kind of come in here. You're also going to go ahead and you're going to see this area that's connected to places like Northern Africa, Asia is connected to Europe. So this area right here is a very difficult to look at because we see so many different areas, so many different people, and they're all kind of trying to fight for what they want. So going to the lecture of chapter 14, section 1, Milosevic is going to go ahead, he's going to be a Serbian who takes control over Yugoslavia in the 1990s. If you look at it, guys, Yugoslavia, you are not going to see that on a map right now. Yugoslavia is actually going to go ahead and it's going to break up. But during this period of time in the 1990s, Milosevic is going to go to war against the former Yugoslavian republics in 91 and 92. He'll be accused of war crimes in 1990 and voted out of office in 2000. We want to keep him kind of on the back of our minds here because he's going to come into the story a little bit later. Now, the South Slavs, this is going to be a Balkan conflict that stems from different groups wanting the same land. In the 500s, the Slavs migrate to the region from Poland and Russia, and each of the South Slavs are going to be the Croats, Slovens, and the Serbs, and they're going to form their own kingdoms. Remember, anytime that we hear kingdoms, we need to think that eventually they're going to go ahead and they're going to become countries, and in the 500s, you're going to go ahead and you're going to see a lot of culture in this area. Now, the Muslim Ottoman Empire. One thing, anytime you see the Ottoman Empire, think that this is a Muslim empire and they're going to conquer as much as they can. They're going to try to conquer the Balkan Peninsula in the 1300s. They'll defeat the Serbian Empire in 1389 in the Battle of Kosovo Poli. Make sure you keep that Poli in the back of your mind here because that's going to be a battle we'll talk about. Also, they're going to go ahead and they're going to rule Bosnia and Herzegovina. Austria will rule Slovenia, and Hungary will rule Croatia. Under the Ottomans, the Serbs remain Christian, where the Bosnians are going to convert to Islam. So what we're going to see is that in this small peninsula right there, you're going to see a group that is Christian and you're going to see a group that is Muslim, and that's never a good thing. You're usually going to see fighting when that happens. Both the Serbs and the Albanians live in Kosovo, but the Serbs are going to flee Muslims, and Kosovo region becomes Albanian in culture. I believe that was in the video right there. Now, Yugoslavia is going to be formed. Serbia will break away from the Ottoman Empire in 1878. The Serbs want all South Slavs free from foreign rule, and that's something that Serbia continues to push for a long period of time. Now, this effort is going to spark World War I, and you might say, how does this happen? If you kind of recall, all the countries right at the turn of the century have been getting into alliances, and they want to make sure that they're always connected in case somebody tries to take them over. What happens is that a militant group, kind of I wouldn't call them a terrorist organization, but an organization that's pretty bent on war. What they're going to do is that they're called the Black Hand, and they're going to go and they're going to kill Archduke Franz Ferdinand. When this happens, this brings all the countries into the war, and that gets World War I going. So that one group right here, the Serbs, are the group that kind of starts that kind of the domino effect of World War I. The kingdom of the Serbs, Croats, and Slovens is formed in 1918, and they're going to be renamed Yugoslavia in 1929. Now, the next part of the story is going to be the communist rule. Germany and Italy, as some of you guys remember from your World War II lectures, they're going to invade the Balkans, and the Croats are going to help the Nazis massacre the Jews and the Serbs. So obviously the Serbians are going to be very unhappy with the Croats. Other Yugoslavs are going to help the Checheniks, and the Partitions are going to fight up the Nazis. So that becomes kind of an issue here, because the Chechens and the Partitions are going to be unhappy with the Croats for basically massacring people. After the war, partition leader Joseph Tito is going to rule Yugoslavia. Tito is going to encourage all groups to see themselves as Yugoslavs. So what he's trying to get away from is Chechens, Partitions, Croats, Serbs. He doesn't want them to consider themselves anymore. He wants them to consider themselves Yugoslavs, and this is where you kind of start to see the idea of nationalism and worrying more about your own country. 1946, Yugoslavia is going to create a constitution that's going to have 6 republics: Bosnia and Herzegovina, Croatia, Macedonia, Montenegro, Serbia, and Slovenia. Now, with these countries right here, hopefully you guys, or when you kind of heard this, you started thinking that you have heard about these countries already, because this is going to be the countries from your test, or from your map test. So just realize that these republics eventually are going to become the countries. Now, Serbia has 2 self-governing provinces, Kosovo and Vojvodina. Croatia and Bosnia are ethnically mixed, and they're going to contain many Serbs. So what we see then is that the communist rule is going to make it so that there's going to be a lot of internal fighting. Now, again, I know this is kind of a difficult lecture. You guys are doing as much as you can right here, but what we see is that Serbia is going to go ahead and kind of start to try to push their way into being in control. Tito dies in 1980. Yugoslavia has no single ruler or central ruler. The presidency starts rotating from republic to provinces. Now, Milosevic is going to propose a creation of a greater Serbia, wants to expand the borders to include all of the areas with Serbian populations. Serbia is going to block Croatian from becoming Yugoslavian president in 1991, which is going to cause issues with Slovenia and Croatia, so they declare independence. Serbia-led Yugoslavian army invades Slovenia and Croatia, basically to stop them from becoming independent. Now, Slovenia gains their independence in 1991, but Croats have got a large Serbian minority. Serb-Croats hatred is going to fuel a violent war. So the Serbia and the Croats start fighting a lot. It gets so bad that the United Nations brokers peace in 1992. So they got to come in and they basically got to stop this war. Now, Bosnia and Herzegovina is going to declare independence in 1992, but Serbia wants to get rid of the Bosnian Muslims and the Croats. So the Serbs are going to use something that's called ethnic cleansing. This is a violent elimination of an ethnic group. Now, if this is something that you kind of recall, this is what Adolf Hitler is going to use to basically get rid of the people that are Jewish, people that are the gypsies, people that are handicapped. This is ethnic cleansing. Over 200,000 people die. 2 million people are going to flee the area. And so what you start to see is that this war in Bosnia becomes really, really bad. The war in Kosovo then is also going to become a major issue in the world. The Serbs are going to be led by Milosevic. They're going to seek revenge for the Battle of Kosovo Poli. Remember, I told you to remember that. It starts to come back now. Kosovo is inhabited by the Muslim Albanians, and Kosovo is going to seek independence. So the Kosovo Liberation Army attacks these Serbian officials. Serbia then is going to come back, and they're going to start to bomb the Albanians, and they're going to launch a ethnic cleansing. 1992, NATO bombs Serbia to stop the Serbian violence, and soon Milosevic is going to go ahead and withdraw from his troops in Kosovo. So what is happening right here, just kind of to refresh what's going on, is that all of these countries, they've got all different types of people, and they're all kind of connected in here. They've got different religions, different ethnic groups, and they're all fighting because they all want a piece of the pie. They all want to be part of that Balkan conflict, and they want to have as much rule as possible. Some people want to create an entire country of Yugoslavia. Some people want to go ahead and they want to kind of break off and become their own, and they start to continue to fight. And really, when NATO bombs Serbia, it kind of wakes up the rest of the world to realizing And if something doesn't happen, this could lead to a major conflict. Now, in 2000, Yugoslavians are going to elect leader Košunica as president. Ethnic tension remains. Wars are creating millions of refugees and poverty. So this area that should be so important and so wealthy, it doesn't, and ethnic tensions remain, and when we see that, there's going to cause problems for the rest of this area. Kosovo and Montenegro seek independence. 2002, leaders of Serbia and Montenegro sign a cooperation agreement, and they're basically going to form a new unit called Serbia-Montenegro. Hopefully this lecture wasn't too difficult. If you do have any questions, don't be afraid to ask, but you can go ahead and at this point complete Chapter 14, Section 1 assessment.